From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana. Summer is officially over, for the politicians at least, as MPs flood back to Westminster today. For Labour, it's been a tough recess. Last week, a devastating new poll showed the party's popularity at a 6-year low, with Reform speeding ahead with an 8-point lead. But the threat for Keir Starmer's government doesn't just come from the right. They're also losing support to a resurgent, radical left.
Listen, people have had enough out there. They're fed up with seeing cuts to their services, continuing child poverty, and the only thing they can find money for is more weapons of war.
Jeremy Corbyn, remember him, has set up a new political party, and polling suggests it could take a quarter of the Labour vote.
Hundreds of thousands of people signing up almost overnight for this new political party.
Larger than the largest Labour Party membership ever.
Although they do still need to finalise some of the finer points of having a party, like coming up with a name.
It'll be short and inclusive, and so any ideas out there, I'm ready to receive them.
Suggestions received so far include Jezbollah, the S-Club Party, the Judean People's Front and, perhaps unsurprisingly, the People's Front of Judea. Meanwhile, the Greens are electing a new leader tomorrow, and the contest has sharpened the party's focus on presenting itself as a more left-wing alternative to the Labour government.
They stoke racist narratives about strangers destroying everything. Well, I call where do we draw the line?
With the left splintering and Reform stealing the Tories' thunder, is radicalism on both sides winning the day? The story today, why the left is radicalising. If you're happy, would you mind just introducing yourself again to our listeners?
I'm Aubrey Allegretti, and I'm the Times' chief political correspondent.
Aubrey, a lot of people will have been surprised to see a political career being resurrected effectively. Jeremy Corbyn, back again. Tell us what we can expect.
So in late July of this year, Jeremy Corbyn launched this movement under the banner of Your Party. He was going to co-lead it with Zara Sultana. Both of them had been Labour MPs, but it's been about 5-6 weeks since this was launched, slightly preemptively, because Zara Sultana actually came out and announced that she was leaving the Labour Party and simultaneously announced that she was going to launch this new movement with Jeremy Corbyn. And then we heard nothing from Jeremy Corbyn for about 24 hours. It didn't seem very well choreographed, and it then emerged that allies of Jeremy Corbyn were very unhappy and disgruntled at the way that Zara Sultana had, in their view, bounced Jeremy Corbyn into announcing this project that was still the subject of very live debate about what it should be. And then 24 hours later, Jeremy Corbyn joined Zara Sultana in confirming that there would be a new movement, but we heard again very little. Fast forward some weeks later, we got a little bit more information. We found out that the holding name for it was going to be Your Party. So Zara Sultana has set out a little bit about what she thinks the future of this party is. It was going to have a sort of broadly pro-Gaza focus. It was going to be anti-austerity. It was going to stand for significant redistribution of wealth. She suggested that it could be called the left.
Because it says what it is on the tin. I think when we look at political parties in the UK, they represent the billionaires, they represent oil and gas, and we're saying this is a member-led party, by members, for members, and they're going to shape everything that we do.
Which is actually in keeping with something that other European left-wing parties do. There's Die Linke in Germany. She suggested that the new party should focus on advocating things like more time with loved ones, more green space, universal childcare, free public transport.
We will address people's material concerns because everyone is worried about the end of the month when the bills drop.
Broadly, sort of an argument against the cost of living crisis and people worrying about their bills. And she's actually said that the party should build on the strengths of Corbynism. But I think there is an extent to which she is seeking to carry the torch and take over from Corbynism. But the sort of details in terms of the leadership structures, how many candidates going to field, which elections it's planning to field them in, nitty-gritty detailed policy remains unknown. We've been promised all of that at a conference which I'm told is likely to happen in November.
And Aubrey, just remind us why Corbyn and his co-founder, Zara Sultana, why they were both former members of Labour rather than current ones.
When Keir Starmer became leader, one of the things that he inherited was an investigation by the Equality and Human Rights Commission into claims of institutional anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. And there was an investigation by the Equalities Watchdog, which concluded that Labour had effectively broken the law.
The report finds serious failings in leadership, processes and culture in dealing with anti-Semitism within our party.
Unlawful acts of harassment and discrimination, and there was a failure by the Labour leadership to address anti-Semitism and inadequate processes for handling anti-Semitism complaints. That was a big moment for Keir Starmer.
And so, on behalf of the Labour Party, I am truly sorry for all the pain and grief that has been caused.
And he decided to effectively suspend Jeremy Corbyn, throw him out of the party, and so he stood as an independent instead. That's Jeremy Corbyn's history. Zara Sultana's is much shorter, actually, because she stood as a Labour MP at the 2024 general election in Coventry and won, but very soon after the election there was a vote on trying to remove the two-child benefit cap. And she was part of a contingent of Labour MPs who voted against it, and in the early days of this administration had the whip suspended from them, which means that they can no longer sit as Labour MPs in Parliament. And that's why they both now sit as independent MPs.
Aubrey, in terms of the grassroots, do we have a sense of whether there is an appetite for this new party? Does it have a natural constituency? Where are the polls?
As with any way of measuring what a political party wants to do, you sort of need to poll or measure different constituencies. You're thinking firstly about the membership and then also about the voters. There are over 800,000 people that have signed up to support this. They don't have to pay a membership fee, so the bar to sort of supporting is quite low. Labour has, I think it's about 330,000 members, and so we know a little bit about actually what Labour members think. 1 in 4 who were polled recently said that they would consider backing Jeremy Corbyn's new party at the next general election. And when you, again, ask a sort of quite broad question of Labour members, we hear that 59% of them want Keir Starmer to pursue a sort of roughly more left-wing agenda. Just 2% think he should move to the right. And there's 35% roughly who think he's kind of on the right track. He just needs to get stuff done faster. There are polls suggesting that about 1 in 10 members of the public could be persuaded to vote for this new party. But in order for that to work, it's going to need a cohesive narrative. Some of the figures involved in the Your Party movements have a history of machinations and infighting almost overtaking what should be the broader aim.
So do they just end up becoming a movement that splits the vote rather than winning a presence in Parliament?
Quite possibly, although again, how that split manifests is really interesting. And actually, if you look at Labour's strategy overall, it is very much to frame the next general election as Nigel Farage being the real leader of the opposition, the Conservatives completely impotent, dead and buried. And so Labour strategists are betting that they will be able to frame the election as Starmer versus Farage, and that they think is the way to squeeze the vote on the left, so that there is enough fear, enough concern that if there is any kind of split on the left, it will only end up benefiting Nigel Farage.
Could this movement, could the Jeremy Corbyn party actually end up being a threat to Farage? Because many of his economic policies are quite socialist in many ways.
Absolutely. Nigel Farage has been on a very interesting journey over the last 6 to 8 months, and the sort of political horseshoe as it is would appear to mean that Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage do share lots of political similarities. I think there was a game played on ITV's Peston show where they had John McDonnell and Richard Tice answering questions about who said it, Corbyn or Farage.
Welcome to the break, #Peston. This is a fun one.
Yeah.
It's Corbyn or Farage. I'm going to read you a number of quotes.
Yeah.
You guess who said it. Okay, here we go.
And they both really struggled and got it all wrong.
In almost every country in which the West has intervened or even implied support for regime change, the situation has been made worse, not better. Yeah, do you think?
Just Jeremy.
Nigel Farage. You're joking, mate.
So there are lots of similarities, and Reform has been advocating, of course, things like the renationalisation of British Steel, the renationalisation of Thames Water as well. These are things which Jeremy Corbyn had advocated for very strongly and has advocated for many years. So there absolutely could be a case of there being much more in common in the sort of Venn diagram between your party and Reform than it might first appear.
My name is Josh Glancy. I am Associate Editor of The Sunday Times.
Josh, we've been talking to Aubrey about the resurgence of Jeremy Corbyn as a figure on the left with his own party/movement. You've been looking at another part of that bit of the political spectrum increasingly, and that's the Green Party. For our listeners, I suppose I really ought to ask to begin with, the Greens. Why should people care?
Well, I must admit, Manveen, when I embarked upon this piece that I published about the Greens last week, I wasn't massively engaged with what was going on. But in the process of reporting on them, I became very interested because there is a race going on inside the Green Party for the leadership that I think tells us a lot about what is going on in our politics right now and has much wider application than just the Greens. So that's one reason. And the other is that something quite significant is stirring on the left in this country. And we're seeing one manifestation of it, which you've already talked about through Jeremy Corbyn. I think another is coming through the Greens. There's a lot of grassroots anger and energy and motivation. And I think it is going to be an important force in our politics over the next few years.
And just a quick recap. I mean, where are the Greens? Because, they get reported on a lot as sort of a fringe movement. But in terms of a presence in Parliament now and in terms of their sort of vote share, how big a force are they?
Well, they have 4 MPs, which is the same number as the Reform Party. And you might have observed that the Reform gets rather more media attention.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't poll anything like the Reform Party does, but they poll at about 7 or 8%. They have well over 800 councillors. They're at their record number of councillors, and they have control of a few councils as well. So they're in decent shape as a fifth party, you might call them, I suppose. But there are some within their ranks who feel that they could be doing a lot better. Their path to doing better is the big schism within the party at the moment, and how this leadership race is developing is about how do they get to the next step? How do they become the big insurgent party of the left in this country? Because what they've observed is that there is a lot of frustration with Labour. There's a lot of buyer's regret with Labour on the left. There's a lot of young people, not just young people, but who feel that Starmer isn't for them, he hasn't delivered, he's a centrist, he wants to do all sorts of things that disappoint them on welfare, on Gaza, other things, and they're shopping around. And the Greens really want to be the place where people come if you're left-leaning and you don't like the government.
So they've spotted an opportunity on the political spectrum, a whole bit of the constituency that feels underserved by Labour. All of this now in terms of their strategy going forward and how they managed to grasp that bit of the electorate comes down to a battle in the party now, which is being seen through a leadership contest. For people who haven't been following it, who's in the running?
Okay, for the very few of you who haven't been following this, you have 2 traditional, I guess you might call it establishment Green Party candidates. They probably wouldn't like that term. Ellie Chowns and Adrian Ramsey.
We stand at a crossroads between the politics of fear and division and the politics of hope and real vision.
And they're running on a joint ticket.
To challenge the rise of the far right and show the way to that greener, fairer future, we need our party to be a credible political force to build an unstoppable movement for positive change.
Adrian Ramsey is the MP in Suffolk and Waveney Valley. Ellie Chowns is an MP in Herefordshire. They're both steeped in the Green Party's politics. And their argument is we've got a good platform. After years of trying, we've worked out how to win some seats and we can build on that. And they both represent seats where there's quite a lot of what you might call Green Tory voters.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to scare the horses with those voters. They don't want to seem too radical and too angry. They said we can build through the politics of consensus. It's a big tent theory. And then on the other side of the ledger, you have this guy, Zach Polanski.
So I'm deputy leader of the Green Party for England and Wales, and I'm running for leader at the moment.
Now, I should just caveat before I go on. Green Party policy is set in lots of kind of cuddly committee sessions and signed off at conference. So these three politicians are not disagreeing on policy, really. What they're disagreeing on is style and strategy. So Zach Polanski is a 42-year-old Mancunian. He's a member of the London Assembly. He's gay, he's vegan, he's a former Lib Dem, and he's what you might typically call, in newspaper language, a firebrand.
Our NHS is crumbling. Our wages are frozen. Our rents are obscene, and our rivers are open sewers. And all those in power can do is blame the boats.
He is quite charismatic. He's very good at going viral on social media and really channeling popular anger.
What do you think about politicians?
When you work in a pub, you don't talk about politics or religion.
Right, okay. How are people who use your pub feeling about politics right now?
That politicians don't really care about everyday people, what they need and want.
He's quite openly inspired by what Nigel Farage has done on the right and by his success in that area. Not by the substance of it. He probably disagrees with almost everything, but by the style. The knowledge that in an attention economy, which is what we live in, you've got to find a way to get people's attention. And his view, somewhat informed by Farage and I suppose by Trump as well, is that you've got to grab people while they're scrolling on their phones, because that's where we all live right now. And I suppose the other difference between the two campaigns really is about system versus anti-system. And you're seeing this play out across politics at the moment. I suppose it's this idea of radicalism versus gradualism. You know, Keir Starmer is system. He wants to take the system we have, make it better, reform it, change it, tweak it. Nigel Farage is anti-system. Burn it down, start again, system's rotten, forget it all. Zach Polanski is what I would call anti-system. And he says, you know, I don't want to be worried about the Labour Party. I want to replace the Labour Party.
You've met Polanski, this charismatic firebrand leader. What's he like? And what do we know about his background?
He's a similar age to me. He's very chatty. You know, he's easy to get on with. He's Jewish, but he's very, very passionately pro-Palestine. And he really, how to describe him? He did this video recently, which was him staring at the White Cliffs of Dover.
I met a man recently. Said he wanted to stand on a beach like this one with a gun and shoot the people coming across on small boats. The worst bit, I wasn't even that shocked. Because it's this obsession that has gripped the country.
And his argument was migrants are just being scapegoated. And the real villains in this country are the billionaires.
All this time they've been pointing at the small boats, telling us they were the people to blame. But the problem this whole time was the super rich and their yachts.
And I guess that gives you a sense of the kind of rhetoric. It's quite, I suppose, on the right, you might almost see it as a bit Marxist, but it's certainly quite fervent class politics. And he's quite happy to, you know, really rile that up.
Punchy. Do people want to hear messages like that? Is there a need for a politics like this in terms of where the electorate are at the moment?
So this is, again, the debate that's at the core of this campaign. His argument, Polanski's, is that, yes, we can move the dial considerably, not just among urban progressives, the kind of people you might expect to be receptive to his message, but actually there's people angry all over the country, and we can tap into that. And that at the moment, all those disaffected angry voters are just going to reform. Even if they're not that right wing, his argument is a lot of those could come to us. And there's some data that's done by Focal Data, the polling company, showing that he does actually, when they show the video of his campaign, obviously most people haven't heard of him yet, people respond more positively to him than to Adrian and Ellie.
And they're competing for the left, but could a Corbyn party and the Green Party potentially work together?
They could. Polanski has said he is open to working with what emerges from Corbyn and Sultana. That could mean some sort of cooperation. It could even mean a merge, although I can't quite see that. Adrian and Ellie Chowns told me, well, that just shows you all the more reason to vote for us, because this kind of progressive, urban, radical activist left is going to split up anyway. And actually our slow but steady approach is the better one.
You mentioned earlier that one of the things they're all united on is wanting changes to the electoral system. Just describe what they're hoping to see and whether actually, does that reflect where the population is now? You know, is our first past the post system a bit outdated?
It may well be, in the sense that we now have something like a 5 or 6 party system. I think that the grip of the two leading parties, Labour and the Tories, is the weakest it's been in my lifetime. But obviously our electoral system is still first past the post, which does massively bias towards those parties. Someone like Zach Polansky would argue, well, actually all the Greens, Chowns and Ramsey too, would argue that we're consistently getting 7-8% of the electorate, and yet we have to fight for scraps in Westminster. That's somewhat true of the Lib Dems. It is currently true of Reform. It may be true of this Corbyn Sultana new party as well. So there is a feeling that there is a mismatch between our politics and our political system at the moment.
And Josh, you described that, almost caffeinated sense of frustration across the electorate. It's really interesting, I suppose, watching, both Jeremy Corbyn and the Greens now competing for this space on the left at a time when we actually have a Labour government, when we haven't for decades. Is it the radical right? Is it Nigel Farage that they've ended up sort of becoming a movement to oppose? Or is it actually just that sense of the centre? Is it that sense of incumbent governments who haven't shifted the dial?
I think both the Corbyn Sultana nascent Your Party and the Green Party it is a two-pronged thing. I think on the one hand, these parties exist in opposition to Labour centrism. That is kind of their bread and butter. And anyone who knows anyone who's very left-wing knows that it can be incredibly factional, and it's often about winning control of the left. It's kind of a purity battle. And I think they really resent the way Starmer has taken the Corbynite movement, which looked like it was going to move the whole Labour Party to the left for good, and wrenched it back to the centre. But I think with Farage and co, there is a sense of envy, if we're honest, that they've made so much headway, and an acknowledgement that although their solutions are wrong, their process and approach is something to learn from. They want to borrow from Farage's style, and they want to use it to, as Polansky said to me, I want to replace Labour. Now, that obviously sounds hugely ambitious. I don't think Keir Starmer is struggling to sleep at night right now about Zach Polansky, but it does show you that they believe that what emerges on the left, and we still haven't quite seen what it'll be yet, could do to Labour what Farage appears to be doing to the Conservative Party, which is eating it.
That was Josh Glancy, Associate Editor of The Sunday Times, and Aubrey Allegretti, Chief Political Correspondent at The Times. The producer today was Olivia Case. The executive producer was Taryn Siegel. Sound design was by David Crackles, and theme composition was by Mal Lassetto. If you can, do leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. See you again tomorrow.